Good afternoon, members of the City Planning Commission. This is the review session of July 24th, 2017, and a quorum is present. Our first item on the agenda is the Block 4 contribution in kind at 66 Hudson Yards. It's an authorization for a floor area bonus for new parkland in lieu of a monetary contribution to the Hudson Yards District Improvement Fund. Annie White of the Manhattan office will present the application.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application for an authorization for a property located on Block 4 of the Hudson Boulevard and Park, Manhattan Community District 4. The co-applicants for this project are 509 West 34th LLC and 509 West 34 TRS LLC. They're subsidiaries of Tishman Speyer. This is an authorization to allow a contribution in kind to the Hudson Yards District Improvement Fund to facilitate the construction of a portion of the Hudson Boulevard and Park. The property that will be improved as the Hudson Boulevard and Park is located at 438 11th Avenue between West 36th and West 37th Street in the Special Hudson Yards District. The Special Hudson Yards District was adopted in January of 2005 with the intention of fostering a mixed-use, medium to high-density business district with an extensive open space network. The primary open space in this network is the Hudson Boulevard and Park, a linear north-south park bordered by a tree-lined boulevard that, upon completion, will run from West 33rd Street to West 39th Street between 10th and 11th Avenues. Phase 1 of the park, which runs from West 33rd to West 36th Street, includes blocks 1 through 3 and was acquired by the city for redevelopment and opened to the public in 2015. Phase 2, which is outlined here in red, runs from West 36th to West 39th and includes block 4 through 6. It is not yet under construction. Lots in Phase 2 are in private ownership and are subject to special regulations in the Special Hudson Yards District, designed specifically to facilitate their improvement as part of the Hudson Boulevard and Park, while allowing owners to recognize value from the transfer of the development rights from the parkland. This application is for the improvement of a portion of Block 4, which is the block outlined here in red, and is between West 36th and West 37th Street. So here is just an aerial to put this phasing plan into context of the overall Hudson Yards development. While this Google image is a bit out of date, you can see that the park runs north of the now under construction Eastern Rail Yards here and is just east of the Javits Center. So the Hudson Yard zoning allows for development sites in Subdistrict A to increase their FAR from a base of 10 up to 18 through one or a combination of the following actions. 1, the District Improvement Fund bonus. 2, floor area transfers from Phase 2 of the park. Or 3, the contribution in kind. The contribution in kind mechanism allows for a developer to build a portion of the Hudson Boulevard and Park in lieu of paying into the DIB fund. And by doing so, then receive floor area credit to be used on a designated receiving site. The amount of money spent on the park improvement is translated into a square footage amount based on the current DIB rate. More details on how this floor area is determined will be explained later in the presentation. So for this transaction, the granting site, or the site that will be improved with the Hudson Boulevard and Park, is located at 438 11th Avenue and is the shaded red parcel here. It is an approximately 23,000 square foot lot that is currently an Amtrak rail right-of-way. All floor area on the site has previously been transferred off. The receiving site, which is the block with the dashed red outline, is a large development site 2 blocks to the south between West 34th and West 35th Streets and is also owned by the applicant. The receiving site is located within sub-area A2, which has a C64 underlying zoning district. This site has a lot area of approximately 67,000 square feet. So the receiving site, which is known as 66 Hudson Boulevard, will be developed as a 33 FAR Class A office building, utilizing floor area bonuses through the proposed contribution in kind, the District Improvement Fund bonus, and the transfer development rights from the Eastern Rail Yard. Here are some further floor plans of the granting and receiving sites with the associated lot area. As you can see, the granting site is just the easternmost portion of a larger tax lot, Lot 1, the balance of which is located in sub-area A4 and is planned for development. So the granting site, it's a bit faint, but the shaded portion is the portion that is in the mapped Boulevard and Park, and it's the easternmost portion of the larger Lot 1 that's also owned by Tishman Speyer. Pursuant to Section 9332B, there are multiple findings to receive the contribution in kind authorization. 1, all floor area has been transferred from the granting site. 2, the granting site will be improved at the applicant's expense as a public park or street, as provided by the city map. And 3, the applicant has entered into an agreement or provided instruments in a form satisfactory to the city, providing for the improvement of the granting site as that public park or street. Additionally, the City Planning Commission should approve that the park and boulevard has been designed in accordance with the approved plan, with consultation by the Parks Department and the Department of Transportation. The approved plan the zoning text refers to is the overall Hudson Boulevard and Park Plan approved by the Public Design Commission. In March 2017, the Public Design Commission approved this proposed Lot 1, Block 4 preliminary plan as a portion of the larger approved plan. The proposed plan was designed by Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, the same architects as Phase 1 of the park, and in consultation with both Department of Parks and Recreation and Department of Transportation. Letters of approval of all 3 agencies have been included in your briefing package. Here is an illustrative plan and some renderings to show the drawings that were approved by the Public Design Commission. The park will contain a mix of trees and plantings, a variety of seating, including movable tables and chairs, park benches, and large marble block seating, and a curved pathway lined with plantings and marble block seating. The park has been designed in a way that will be both a continuation of Phase 1 to the south, as well as part of a larger Block 4 concept so that the lot can be expanded on for the future park and boulevard development on Block 4. And finally, the amount of increased floor area generated by the contribution in kind shall be determined by the City Planning Commission after confirming the reasonable cost of such improvements to the lot, including acquisition and site preparation cost, and shall permit a floor area bonus in relation to the price of the Hudson Yards District Improvement Fund, or the DIB rate. The total cost of improving the 20,000 square foot site is approximately $38 million. Using the current DIB price of $126.75, this results in a floor area bonus of 303,563 square feet, or 4.5 FAR on the 66 Hudson Boulevard receiving site. An analysis of the construction cost was undertaken by 3 independent consultants, 1 on the behalf of the applicant, Turner Construction Company, and 1, the Lero Group, on behalf of the Hudson Yards Development Corporation. Hudson Yards Development Corporation, or HYDC, is a public entity established in 2005 to manage the implementation of the Hudson Yards Development Program. The Lero Group, the consultant for the HYDC, was the construction manager for Phase 1 of Hudson Boulevard and Park, so HYDC believes that they are very familiar with the cost of this specific construction and the specificities of the endeavor of building a park over the Amtrak right-of-way. The 2 cost estimates were then analyzed and reconciled by another third-party consultant, AECOM. AECOM has determined that any discrepancies in the 2 cost calculations are reasonable and that their assumptions reflect industry standards. A summary of the cost estimate to explain the ending result of approximately $38.5 million has been included in your briefing package. I will conclude on this final rendering showing a portion of the improved Block 4 looking south from West 37th Street, and happy to answer any questions.
And I'll just note for the record that Commissioner Cantor is recused on this matter. Oh, and Cirillo. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Efron.
I'm coming really late to the game since I wasn't around when this was determined, but I'm just trying to get my mind around something. This may be the only case where we're actually encouraging something to be more expensive, not less expensive, because it benefits the developer in that they get more square footage, if it's more expensive?
So I would hesitate to say we're encouraging,
Well,
I can see what you mean,
The
but
present cost value
Right.
being higher results in greater square footage in perpetuity.
correct.
So if there were a way to do this that was less expensive, there wouldn't be any incentive to do that because it sets the value. I'm just trying to understand this as a public policy matter.
Right, yeah. I think you're correct in that thought. That's why their HYDC was very involved in the process, and we had the Lero Group and AECOM acting as removed third-party consultants to ensure that the cost estimate that was given by Michael Van Valkenburg and the applicant was they weren't inflating the cost of the construction to ensure that we weren't incentivizing them to kind of inflate their construction costs to receive higher floor area.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's the reason for the second cost estimate, to have it be a reality check. Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, Kenny, I have a question along those lines, which I was going to ask second, but I'll ask it first since we're on that topic. And then I have a park design question. But first off, I think this is the first time we've seen this authorization used.
That's true.
It's great to see action being taken to build out the Phase 2 part of this park. The Phase 1 is fully built and funded, but when the funded and built, I guess, is the order in which it went. There was great uncertainty surrounding getting Phase 2 built, and so it is good to see the process moving forward. I'm on the issue of how you calculate the size of the bonus. You're right, there is a tension in the city wanting to get the park built, so they want a great park, and then you want to be sure that the developer is getting not an unfair number of square feet.
Right.
This is the first time you see, well, for one thing, the zoning resolution doesn't really lay out, doesn't say that you take the cost and divide it by the DIB amount. We don't do that so boldly in zoning. For example, subway improvement bonuses, I think, go through a similar sort of analysis, but we always sort of hide behind this notion that we're making a fair and objective judgment about what is right. But the way it's laid out in the, and I was around when that zoning text was written. I was surprised, though, to see it now, years later, and realize how starkly those two things are equated. And because this comes in the paragraph right after the DIB bonus, of course it makes sense that if there is a price that you would pay to buy a bonus, that would be the price that was used for this in-kind calculation. But that provision also provides for a cost adjustment in the price, consumer price index adjustment, which I guess happens August 1st. And the footnote says, well, there wouldn't be an adjustment if this gets approved before August 1st, which I'm guessing this isn't going to get approved before August 1st. So one of my questions is, does the price adjust? And then it also talks about how the City Planning Commission can do a market survey and adjust the price if, in broader terms, if there have been significant changes in the market in that area. Now, I'm not volunteering to do a market study for Hudson Yards, but my guess is that in the 12 years in between, there has been a significant change in price, and is it time for us to, is it our responsibility to look at that District Improvement Fund amount?
So in regards to the cost adjustment on August 1st, I'll look to Dominic for maybe a nod of approval, but I believe if the restrictive declaration and the legal documents are executed and recorded before that August 1st date, the previous DIB fund amount is set, even though this certainly won't be receiving City Planning Commission approval by August 1st. In regards to the DIB market analysis, I'll have to get back to you on that, but it's noted.
Okay, well, but let's just assume, back to Commissioner Efron's question, if it should be readjusted to an August 1st price, let's just guess that was going to go up, so it means fewer square feet in the bonus.
Right.
So, anyway, just
Right,
let that
yes,
one hang out there.
if for some reason they could not achieve what they needed to by August 1st, they would need to refile with the adjusted numbers, but what they would end up doing they would be receiving less square feet, but then they would be buying DIB to replace that square feet that they're not getting through the contribution behind.
Okay. So may I ask my design question? I'm struck by the,
Yep.
that one,
Yep.
that one. That's half a park and half a boulevard. So what's the plan for the rest?
So when this was done, it was actually designed as the full block and then kind of cut down and slightly modified so that it could be a phased plan. So PDC, Public Design Commission, has seen the full plan for the Block 4, and with the understanding that this just needs to, any park is better than no park at this location, and so they're building it as a phase, but it's been designed in a way that it can be continuous with the rest. I know the DOT has given preliminary approval of the Boulevard, so I believe as of now it's will be functioning adequately as just this Hudson Boulevard West between 36th and 37th. But if the Boulevard was never really meant to, my understanding was that the Boulevard was never really meant to be a lot of through traffic. It's really just for local, so it shouldn't be too much of a, it was kind of planned in the original imagination of the Boulevard that it would be kind of becoming piecemeal.
Yeah, although I don't know that any of us really imagined that we could end up, I think we thought about piecemeal as block by block. We didn't think half a block by half a block.
Right.
So what's the, and I guess our action here is largely ministerial, right? We're not, anyway, I'd like to know what the whole park is supposed to look like and the degree to which it has been compromised by this split situation. Because there was a park plan that was presented to the community board a couple of years ago that showed a whole lot of active playground, child-focused, resident-focused use. And so this looks pretty passive. So has somebody's vision for this park been compromised as a result of this split condition? Are we still going to get a terrific park at the end of the day? I assume that this is being referred out, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
we'll
this
hear
is
from
going to the community board for 45 days,
Yeah,
and
so-
take a note that during that time, we'll see if we will have the August 1 reset. I don't know how
Okay,
long
okay,
it will take.
okay.
And then second, to see what we can determine
Yeah.
about the plans for the balance
Well,
of
and
the
I'm
park.
confident Board 4 will have an opinion on that, so.
Yes,
Thank you.
Commissioner Efron.
I actually think Commissioner Levin's comparison to the transit improvements is really an interesting one, because there we have been told at certification and then as the process went on, whether it was Vanderbilt or East Midtown, that there were determined improvements that were needed, and the developer in effect plugs into those. I can't tell from this conversation and this plan in particular whether there's a plan and the developer allocates budget toward it, or in other words, quite simply put, if the developer had X dollars it was intending to spend, could it be sprinkled across so that there is the framework of 4 blocks of a plan or 2 sides of a plan? Or who determines whether all the money gets spent on fulfilling one side of one block versus creating at least a framework for a park?
How the text is written now, one issue is that they are improving the land that they own. So all of the other parcels on this block and to the blocks to the north are all under various private ownership. So this is only the portion of the park that Tishman Speyer owns and are able to do the improvements. So they're kind of taking that to the 100% completion on the portion that they own.
And just if I can ask,
Yeah.
so who determines what 100% completion is? Is there a plan, or do they come up with a plan?
There's the plan that's approved. In the text, it's a little vague. It refers to an approved plan, and that has been determined to be the plan that was approved by the Public Design Commission.
But that was before Tishman Speyer made its proposal? In other words, did somebody else spec the plan and they're budgeting it? Or did they create the plan? And I think it's relevant because, right, but was it Tishman Speyer's plan, or was this a plan that Tishman Speyer plugged into? And I think it's relevant for not just this project, but also a whole bunch of other contributions to the public realm that we are, as a commission, looking at.
I'll definitely follow up on this. I believe that there was the plan that Michael Van Valkenburg, that was a more schematic plan for the rest of the park that was approved, and then they had to go back and get a preliminary approval for the phasing, because specifically for Tishman's proposal to just do this portion, and so that's how they came up with the phasing plan that was approved in March, I believe, but I can make sure of that and follow up.
Just from my perspective, I'm not sure the public good is best served by having, and I'm really exaggerating here on purpose, a $1 billion plan for one half of one block versus and extra square footage on a building versus a leaner plan that gets used in lower square footage. So I would want to know what the city thinks is the right park for this particular piece of the block.
Yeah, very much. We'll determine, get more facts about the park itself, but then also look at the structure that was set up at the time, which does lay out this mechanism.
If we could see the whole plan for all 3 blocks, that would be helpful.
Yes, Commissioner Deleuze.
And, I mean, it lays out here, obviously, that the Department of Parks and Recreation is involved in the consultation, and it would just be helpful to get any more, when it comes back, any more information from them.
Other comments? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. Quick question. As I look at this, I'm curious about, just for my edification, who maintains this? And, my understanding is that when improvements are made, they have to be to a certain standard, and anything above that, there needs to be a maintenance agreement. And so could you just describe what will happen with respect to that?
So it will be, the land will be given over to the city, so it'll be maintained, like phase 1, by the Department of Parks and Recreation. There's going to be, as far as, I don't know if there's a maintenance, I can follow up about a maintenance agreement, but there's certainly a restrictive declaration that kind of outlines that process.
I may be mixing apples and oranges, but I do know when, improvements are made to streets and, the selection of, benches and additional, street improvements that go above and beyond the baseline, what the baseline is for the city, that another entity has to come in and agree to maintain those. And so this gets back a little bit to the cost. This really looks quite beautiful. I'm wondering if this is designed to a standard that requires a higher degree of maintenance, and if we're taking on the costs associated with that maintenance, or if there's another entity that will be doing so.
Other questions? If not, as Commissioner Levin noted, this is getting referred out to the Community Board for 45 days, and we'll have a lot more information when it comes back from there. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you.
Thank you. As the chair noted, Commissioners Cirillo and Cantor were recused on item 1, and we can invite them back into the hearing room now. We're going to move to item number 2 on page 24 of your briefing package, 10 East 30th Street parking renewal. These are 2 consecutive special permit renewals to facilitate the continued use of a parking garage, which was initially approved in 1957. Sarah Elmore of the Manhattan office is here to present the proposal.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by Aero Parking Corporation requesting 2 authorizations to extend the term of a special use permit granted in 1957 for an attended public parking garage with more than 150 spaces located at 10 East 30th Street in Manhattan Community District 5 for 2 additional 10-year terms. The site is zoned C52 and is situated on an approximately 7,200 square foot interior lot located on the south side of East 30th Street. In 1957, in October of 1957, the City Planning Commission granted a special use permit to allow the use and operation of a public parking garage with a capacity of 150 or more parking spaces for a term of 25 years. Most recently, the site was granted an authorization to extend the term of the special use permit for an additional 10-year term from October 9th, 1992 to October 9th, 2002. The site is developed with a 7-story attended public parking garage. The existing garage contains 188 parking spaces and 10 reservoir spaces. Furthermore, the garage has racks for 19 bicycles on the 4th level that can be rented for $150 a month or $13.78 a day. No changes to the garage structure are proposed as a part of the first application to retroactively extend the term of the special use permit from 2002 to 2012. The applicant intends to make minor modifications to the garage as a part of the second application to extend the term of the special use permit from 2012 to 2022 in order to improve traffic flow and circulation, improve safety within the garage, and to bring the garage into greater compliance with current rules and regulations for public parking garages. Such improvements include additional safety signage, a new light sound garage exit alarm, a new convex mirror at the exit lane, new wheel stops with yellow stripes, and new speed bumps at all lanes entering and exiting the garage. In addition, the applicant proposes to reduce the number of reservoir spaces from 10 to 6 to improve the functionality of the reservoir spaces and to reflect the actual operation of the garage. The 4 reservoir spaces that are proposed to be eliminated were located outside the entrance lanes for the garage and would not meet the standards for reservoir spaces under today's requirements, as a car waiting in those reservoir spaces would need to reverse in order to access the garage's elevators. These applications were referred to Community Board 5 on June 19th. The applicant team presented to the Land Use Committee on July 5th, and at that meeting, the Land Use Committee requested that the applicant provide the Community Board with an affidavit to ensure that all proposed safety improvements be completed within 6 months of the date of approval. The applicant provided this affidavit to the Community Board prior to the full board meeting on July 13th, as requested, and at the full board meeting, the Community Board voted to recommend approval of this application with 35 in favor, 0 opposing, and 1 abstaining. I would also like to follow up on 2 inquiries that were raised at the June 19th review session. The first was a request to understand why the applicant is first coming in now. The applicant was unaware that this authorization was necessary when they purchased the property and were found out when they received a violation from the Department of Buildings. And then the second was to request an example of another authorization of the same type that has been so past the most recent approval. And 420 to 450 East 63rd Street, certified 8 years after expiration. That's certified in 2012. That's a 290 parking garage, space parking garage. Thank you.
Questions? Okay, then we will schedule this for a vote of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 on today's agenda, the Soho Tower on page 59 is a special permit for an additional 14 parking spaces in an automated garage. Stephen Johnson from the Manhattan office will make the presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Soho Tower is a private application for a special permit to increase the permitted number of accessory residential parking spaces in the Hudson Square neighborhood of Manhattan, Community District 2. The project was certified on May 8, 2017, and is returning for pre-hearing. The applicant is seeking the grant of a special permit under the Manhattan Port parking regulations to allow an additional 13 residential parking spaces for a total of 42 spaces, an accessory automated parking garage, and a new mixed-use building at 100 Barrack Street. Community Board 2 and the Borough President both recommended approval of the application. I'll provide a brief overview of the project. This is an illustration looking south on Barrack Street with the, you can see the Jenga tower right in the back there. So the proposed new mixed-use building is located on the western portion of a zoning lot that fronts on Broome Street to the north, Barrack Street to the west, and Watt Street to the south, directly across the street from Freeman Plaza and the access ramps to the Holland Tunnel. The development site is shown in white on our map here. An existing 6-story commercial building is being retained on the eastern portion of the lot. The surrounding Hudson Square neighborhood was historically developed with large buildings for manufacturing uses, which have been largely converted to office use. The area has seen an increase in new residential and hotel developments after the 2013 rezoning of the special establishment of the special Hudson Square district. The neighborhood is well served by mass transportation with stations located at nearby Canal Street, the 1, AC, and East trains. The project being constructed on the development site is a 25-story, largely residential building with 2-story retail base. The largely as-of-right development would include an automated accessory parking garage of 29 spaces and occupy portions of the ground through 4th floors of the building. The applicant now proposes to increase the capacity by 13 spaces for a total of 42 spaces through the special permit within the same volume as the as-of-right garage. As you may recall, the automated parking facility is accessed from the parking entrance on Broome Street here with the curb cut. by a remote control device where vehicles will enter and exit via a two-way driveway through to the inner court and to the automated drop-off area. At the inner court, the incoming driveway splits into two, with one lane accommodating the vehicles dropping off and a bypass lane which allows drivers to drop off the vehicle into the automated facility right here. This is the facility, and here's the 3 reservoir spaces. As shown on this section, the lift transports vehicle to the storage area at the 3rd story of the building. The vehicular storage area is a double height space and has a proposed capacity to accommodate 42 spaces. The 42 parking spaces distributed across 2 layers of storage trays. Your briefing package includes detailed descriptions on how the automated parking facility works. As part of the special permit, the applicant is required to complete a residential growth parking study analysis that shows the change in the number of parking spaces on the left of the study with the change in the number of residential units in the study area. So in the approximately 10 years of the study area, the area has lost a net of 167 spaces and has gained a net of 3,654 parking spaces. The ratio of change in residential parking spaces to change in residential units with the proposed action in the study area is negative 3.3%, which is below the maximum residential growth parking ratio permitted in the area, which is set at 20%. In addition, there's additional findings in addition to the residential growth parking study, and the commission may permit additional parking spaces provided that certain findings regarding the flow of pedestrian and vehicular movements is not affected, efficient functioning of streets, traffic congestion, and streetscapes conditions are met, and the findings are included in your package. So the application was certified and referred to the public on May 8th. CB2 at its full board meeting on June 22nd unanimously approved the application, and the borough president on July 20th also issued a recommendation to approve the application. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Stephen? Let me just ask, I want to make sure I understand this residential growth parking ratio
Yep.
of 20%. It doesn't mean simply that, well, you tell me, go ahead.
So in the Manhattan core, in community districts 1 through 6, there is no required parking.
Right.
But for residential developments, you're permitted to have 20% parking in relationship to the number of dwelling units. So that's the permitted number that we use when looking at the residential growth parking ratio.
Right.
So in this case, it came out to negative 3.3 with the application, if it's approved. And if it were over 20%, or if it was at 30%, that would suggest that recent trends in the areas, that there's enough parking.
20% measuring the growth from one year to another?
20% through the study period. So the study period is approximately 10 years.
Right.
Looking back up to the build year of the development. This project is already, I'm not sure how far built it is, but it is under construction, and they've definitely gotten to a certain height limit on it.
Okay.
I just thought that I would make an observation. When this had come before us earlier on in the process, I had expressed a fair bit of concern about why the need for additional parking. But in going and looking at what the findings are, the zoning resolution is drafted quite narrowly, and it certainly strikes me, looking at what the conditions are, that much as personally I might not want these additional parking spaces and might share that sentiment with others on the commission, that the applicant has met the requirements that are laid out in the zoning. Okay. More questions? Then this will go to a public hearing on Wednesday.
Item number 4, on page 102 of your agenda, is a site selection and acquisition of a site for the relocation of engine 268, ladder company 137 in Rockaway, Queens. Brendan Pilar of the Queens office will tell us what happened at the committee board.
Just a quick bit of background. background before I get to that. So the fire department and DCAS seek a site selection and acquisition of a privately owned site to construct a new firehouse for Engine 268, Ladder 137, in Rockaway Park, Queens, Community District 14. The project area is located approximately 250 feet north of the location of the current firehouse, which is over 100 years old and, according to the fire department, past its useful life as a firehouse. The current Engine 268 Ladder 137 firehouse is located at Beach 116th Street in the middle of the Rockaway Peninsula. The companies are part of the 5 firehouses on the Rockaway Peninsula, which are placed almost in a straight line due to the peninsula's geography and the fire department's need to maintain response times on the peninsula. As I mentioned, the project site is located in Rockaway Park, Queens. It's a lower density residential neighborhood. Beach 116th Street is a local commercial corridor which runs 2 blocks to the north and south. And Beach Channel Drive, which is just to the north of the project site, is a main thoroughfare and through truck route that runs east to west across the Rockaway Peninsula. The project area is privately owned. It was formerly leased to HSBC Bank, but the bank branch was damaged during Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and did not reopen. The site is currently developed with a single-story building and a surface parking facility. It's a rendering of what the new firehouse could look like. The FDNY expects the new firehouse would be a 2-story, approximately 13,000 square foot building. The firehouse is expected to rise approximately 35 feet above grade. And that would be constructed to meet or exceed all flood resiliency standards, including locating the building mechanicals and electrical systems and emergency generators above the floodplain, either on the 2nd floor or the roof of the building. It is expected that 12 firefighters would be on site during each of 2 daily shifts. Now, as I mentioned, the proposed actions are requested because the fire department believes that their current facility for Engine 268 Ladder 137 is past its useful life as a firehouse after finding numerous structural deficiencies in the building. By acquiring the project site, the FDNY would be able to construct a modern, resilient facility that would meet the agency's response times on the Rockaway Peninsula, thereby maintaining and enhancing the unit's overall operational capacity. This was certified out to public review on April 24th. We have our commission has its hearing on Wednesday. Surprisingly, the community board adopted a resolution recommending disapproval of the site selection. They certainly recognized the need for a firehouse in this portion of the Rockaways, but preferred the fire department consider a different site. This site is owned and operated by the Long Island Power Authority. They used to manufacture natural gas on this site. It is a brownfield that is being cleaned up pursuant to the State Department of Environmental Conservation's brownfield remediation program. The fire department will be here on Friday they have carefully considered the site since receiving this resolution from the community board. They've carefully considered this site and for a number of reasons have deemed it less ideal for a future firehouse. The borough president asked that in her conditional approval of this application, asked that the fire department consider a firehouse on this much larger 9-acre Long Island Power Authority owned site. They have certainly done that and can go through their rationale for why they prefer the project site. She also asked the city to work to identify a cultural or art use for the current firehouse. DCAS would be responsible, as I mentioned, for identifying a reuse for that facility. There are certainly lots of arts and cultural groups on the Rockaway Peninsula. In fact, the last firehouse that was relocated is now home to one such group called the Rockaway Waterfront Alliance. That disposition happened in the early 2000s. So there is this relationship between that community and the city out on the Rockaway Peninsula. So just in closing, we do expect representatives of the fire department and DCAS to be here on Wednesday to answer any of the commissioners' questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah,
Vice Chair Nichols.
thank you. Brendan, this is in a flood zone,
It is.
it's fairly obvious. And I'm just wondering, and I don't expect you to go into it in great detail, but given the construction principles now that govern construction in flood zones, coupled with the fact that the engines would be on the ground floor of this new facility, I'm just wondering what are some of the new principles that would govern construction of this
Sure.
facility?
Well, the flood resilient construction standards relate only to buildings. They don't really relate to the big vehicles within those buildings. Generally below your base flood elevation, the only things you're allowed to have are parking, access, and storage. And presumably the parking of fire apparatuses would meet that requirement as parking. So the fire department would be required to locate all of the mechanical equipment above that floodplain. They plan on doing so on the second and third floor. And then below that elevation, the firehouse would be designed so that flood waters can enter and exit as they recede. I think it's important to note that during Hurricane Sandy, when a mandatory evacuation is given, not only are homeowners and business owners expected to move out of that zone, but the fire department moves its equipment out of that zone as well, so that it does not get damaged by the floodwaters. When the waters recede, they then bring that equipment back onto the peninsula when they can perform their duties. Otherwise, the equipment doesn't do much good when it's surrounded by water. So that is the fire department's protocol when a mandatory evacuation order is given, is to pull its equipment off the peninsula so that it and the personnel are kept safe, and then they return as soon as they can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cantor.
Thank you. Good answer to the question. How many feet below the high water mark is the firehouse itself, where the trucks are?
So the the ground elevations range on the Rockaway Peninsula pretty dramatically between the ocean and bayfront, but the bayfront is typically a little lower lying. If we use the FEMA's base flood elevation, which is 10 feet, the ground elevation at this site is approximately 6 feet. So any mechanical equipment need to be at least 4 feet above grade to meet that base flood elevation requirement.
No, I'm not worried about the mechanic, I'm not worried about the building. I'm just thinking about what happens to the community in that area if they need service.
Well, as I
Trucks
mentioned,
have been moved out, that's logical and understandable. But now they're gonna come back into that area to service a fire. What do they do? Is it just tough luck?
I mean, that is one of the realities of living in the floodplain, is that sometimes it floods to the point where fire equipment cannot easily navigate streets or access the fire plugs. And that is certainly something that happened during Hurricane Sandy.
When this was considered, the whole issue was considered, did the question I asked and the response that you gave me to it, was that noted, recognized, discussed, and agreed upon by the parties?
I'm sorry?
I said, the answer you gave me, the logical answer you gave me, I'm wondering, the concerns that I have been addressed, and they've said that this is the best of all the lousy solutions they can come up with?
That's correct. I think the main thing that the fire department will...
This is not to criticize anyone.
So the fire department is very concerned about maintaining its emergency response times on the peninsula if it was no flood event. So this is part of the reason why these fire companies are located as they are on this map, pretty much in a straight line, equidistant between one another. And that is one of the major reasons why the fire department has determined that the site that the community board would prefer is not as ideal, because it would actually place it closer to an existing firehouse on Beach 94th Street. This is Beach 108th Street here, so 8 blocks closer to an existing firehouse, which would then increase the response times further west on the Rockaway Peninsula, which is much more residential in character. So they are very mindful of maintaining and, in fact, improving when they can those emergency response times. And that is why, after searching sites across the Rockaway Peninsula for a new firehouse, is why they settled on the proposed site.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delauze.
Brendan, could you give us a little preview of what we're likely to hear about the former MGP site, the LIPA site, and why it's not appropriate?
Well, I think the first reason that the fire department will say that it's not appropriate for a new firehouse is that it is closer to an existing firehouse facility, and it would then increase the response times further west on the peninsula. I'd say the second issue is that they currently have a budget for a double occupancy firehouse on a site that's approximately 19,000 square feet, which is the size of the project site. This site is over 9 acres in size, which is much larger than the fire department would need for a double company firehouse. One of the things that the community board members discussed at the hearing was the potential for a combined firehouse, police station / Office of Emergency Management campus on the Rockaway Peninsula, which would be certainly a great idea, but that's definitely not what is budgeted for a new firehouse at this location. As I mentioned, this former gas manufacturing plant site is a brownfield and has gone through a cleanup program, but it's also unclear to what standards this site has been cleaned to, and the results of that, the testing results of that analysis, it's unclear when that would be available. So the fire department currently has funding in its budget for a firehouse right now, and it is concerned that that funding might not be there pending the results of the cleanup of this site. I would add, from a planning standpoint, while a long-term use has not yet been identified for the LIPA site, it is located directly across the street from a new, very popular citywide ferry service. And it is, at least from a planning perspective, questionable that a firehouse would be the best use to be located next to this really important transit resource on the Rockaway Peninsula that provides direct access to Rockaway Beach, which is 2 blocks to the south. So I think there are a number of both programmatic and planning challenges with locating a firehouse on this site.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. Some questions with respect to context a little bit. I'm just looking at the images, and I'm curious what's happening to the north of that site. So as you walk along Beach 116th, you know, we have this vibrant commercial district, and we have a very challenging intersection that could potentially be made less challenging if the right design interventions were in place. So what's happening to the north, and could you speak to that edge?
Sure. So the current firehouse is located right here with the black roof of the building, and one of the something that the fire department is likely to explain is they don't have off-street parking at this site, so by actually relocating this facility and providing on-site parking there, it would free up parking to serve shoppers of this, as you mentioned, vibrant commercial corridor, which it certainly is. As you move north, closer to the proposed site, towards Jamaica Bay, there is a park that serves as a memorial to 9/11. There is a Duane Reade pharmacy located right on Jamaica Bay. And this is a gas station that we're looking at right here on this building. There are a number of single-story commercial buildings further east on Beach Channel Drive. So there's a lot of shoppers of the kind of Bayside sites here would likely drive into the site, do their shopping, and then leave. This is a very challenging pedestrian connection. There has been a lot of interest to study it further. I know it is on the Department of Transportation's radar just because it is the confluence of so many different streets in such a small area. But that it would help improve connections through this open space resource and the beach and boardwalk further to the south. You mentioned the context. I will say that this is on the edge of a residential area, which the current firehouse currently is. Some of the feedback from the community board's consideration of this firehouse was that Beach 117th Street right here is a residential block. But I'll note that it is a one-way north to south street, so the only reason that the fire department would have its trucks on the street is if it was responding to an emergency on that street itself. It would much more likely have its vehicles exit on Beach Channel Drive and then return to the firehouse on Newport Avenue. So that interaction between firehouses and the residential community would be as limited as possible.
I guess the question I'm raising is what are the edge conditions? You know, are they, is there any consideration of tree coverage along the edges?
Sure.
You know, something that would make it more appealing for pedestrians to walk across to the memorial, and clearly there's a walkway along the bay that right now seems very desolate. So how can we ensure that, and there are design interventions here that make it more appealing as a pedestrian environment, because a parking lot is not appealing to walk past on a brutal, scorching day. So, and particularly if there is commerce on the other side of Beach Channel, I mean, we have that whole edge. I really want to understand what's happening at that edge and how we can improve it.
Sure. At least around the project site, if this project is approved, the fire department would be responsible for planting street trees, one tree for every 25 feet of frontage around this entire site. And as you can see, it has 4 street frontages, so there would be several new
That's
street trees
helpful.
introduced that have never been on this site. The bay wall and the bay edge itself is a whole other story. It has actually been through a pretty significant process that's been spearheaded by EDC to repair it following damage even prior to Hurricane Sandy. So it has been repaired in stages. But as you know, there is a strip here that provides public access along this very busy street. And it is in fact mapped parkland. So it's certainly related to the kind of importance of Beach 116th Street in terms of, this portion of the peninsula and what it could mean for to have an even more active and more vibrant commercial corridor. But there needs to be a kind of longer term focus on what happens on the
And if they could just speak to the edge condition and that there has been thought given to that, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Other commissioners? I would just note that last week, Mayor de Blasio moved City Hall out to Queens, and that is always a great opportunity for me, for Purnima, for others to go out and visit the many, many project sites. And I cannot recommend highly enough taking the ferry in from the Rockaways, the best $2.75 you've ever spent.
Maybe not today.
Our next pre-hearing item is...
And actually, I'll just note that this goes to public hearing on Wednesday.
Our next pre-hearing item is item number 5. It's at 13501 35th Avenue in Flushing. It is zoning text and map changes to facilitate a new 8-story mixed-use building.
Hi. Cemex Realty is seeking a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment to change a portion of M1-1 block in Flushing, Queens. The project area is located at the southwest corner of Farrington Street and 35th Avenue, 1 block north of Northern Boulevard and Main Street. The area is composed of a mix of land uses including residential, commercial, retail, medical offices, hotel, and light manufacturing. Ground floor retail, medical offices, community facility space such as senior centers are located all along 35th Avenue within mixed-use buildings ranging from 5 to 11 stories. This includes a 10-story, 4-building NYCHA Latimer Gardens campus, 1 block adjacent to the project site. 1 block adjacent west of the project site is a construction site undergoing construction for a 14-story mixed-use building. And just south and next to Town Hall is a site that recently got approved for a C4 through rezoning to allow for 11-story hotel and residential development. The image on your top left shows the current use of the site, which is a single-story, 8-unit commercial building containing a cafe, beauty supply, restaurant supply, and hardware store. The adjacent lot to your top right is property under ownership of the Department of Cultural Affairs. This property is leased by Flushing Town Hall and is a parking lot. There are no plans to develop on the site as the parking lot has recently been renovated. Pictures on the bottom are existing buildings across the street. As certified on May 8th, the applicant was seeking a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from M11 to R7A C23 to facilitate the development of an 8-story mixed-use building where ground floor and cellar were proposed for retail and office space, and floors 2 to 8 were proposed for 76 residential units, of which 22 were affordable. Now, during the Iola process, a modified application was submitted on July 11th by the applicant in response voiced by the community board after certification. This slide shows the application as certified on May 8th with the request for zoning action on a zoning map amendment change from M11 to R7A C23. Post-certification, the community board requested removal of the commercial overlay, and an A application was submitted to reflect this action. The Community Board expressed concerns regarding traffic on 35th Avenue. The Community Board supported the proposed rezoning and text amendment provided that the overlay be removed. The Community Board requested a letter from Councilmember Koo confirming his support of removal of the commercial overlay. As part of their recommendation letter, Community Board 7 has attached the council members and applicants' letter supporting the removal of the commercial overlay. The Borough President recognized the land use rationale, but recommended similar to the Community Board and council member. This slide shows the map amendment without the commercial overlay. So as previous, there were patchings, now this shows without the overlay. The A application proposes a development with only residential use, which would include 93 dwelling units, including 27 affordable units. This removal of overlay will bring the building north of the site, Lot 7, which is here, this little 4,000 square feet, into nonconformance, as today it is a single-story commercial food warehouse on a 4,000 square foot lot. Unchanged from their certified application and approved by the Community Board and Queens Borough President is a second action for a zoning text amendment to designate the rezoning area as MIH. The proposed MIH zoning text amendment would increase the max permitted FAR within the project area from 4.0 to 4.6. The applicant is seeking option 2, where 30% of the residential floor area designated for affordable housing for residents within incomes averaging 80% AMI. The project will provide at least 27 of the proposed 93 units as affordable. This is a rendering for illustrative use only of the proposed project at certification, showing the ground floor as commercial use and second to 8 floors as residential. This is the current proposed plan for illustrative use only, where it shows the residential from first to top. The applicant representative will be ready to address Commissioner Efron's question regarding R7A and R6 from certification at public hearing on Wednesday, as this question was similarly asked by the Committee Board.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Efron?
Just curious if the or I would hope the applicant, or the Community Board, though I suspect it would be the applicant who knows the information, can let us know how many jobs are being eliminated with the taxpayer retail no longer having a future life in the project.
Sure. Commissioner Deleuze?
It would be helpful if the applicant can speak to why they chose, or why they'd like to choose option 2, and it'd be helpful to know if there was any conversation at the Community Board about a different option considering the AMI level that exists in the community.
They will address that, for sure.
Where are the curb cuts?
The curb cuts are located, in the proposed plan, the curb cut will be located here on a 22-inch curb. 22-foot curb cut on Farrington side.
And a two-way street, I don't recall. That's Barrington, right?
Yes,
It's Barrington two ways?
yes.
Yeah. Because you got an awful lot of heavy traffic over there at London Place, Barrington, and 35th Avenue. How many vehicles?
The proposed accessory parking space is 52.
That's in the 2 levels or 1 level?
I believe it's seller and subseller.
Has anyone done a study with regard to the impact? First of all, I assume the curb cut is 50 feet off the street line.
I will have to double
Is
check.
that accurate?
I can take a look at the plans.
But has any study been done with respect to traffic flow?
As part of the environmental analysis, yes.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
On the way to answering Commissioner Deleuze's question about the affordability levels, I'd also be interested in unit mix.
Unit mix?
Yeah.
I actually do this. The new affordable housing breakdown, they've said that there would be proposed 5 studio apartments, 9 one-bedroom apartments, 12 two-bedroom apartments, and 1 three-bedroom apartments.
Thank you. Other comments? Would you mind going back to the photographs that you had?
Yes.
There is one thing very wrong with these photographs. They must have been taken at the crack of dawn because the street activity there is just so very vibrant. The other thing that I would note that we as a department are looking at is whether it makes sense to exclude the adjoining building from the rezoning so as not to render it non-conforming. As you can see from looking at these pictures, ground floor commercial uses is the norm. And the other thing that we are looking at is that city-owned lot. There are no development proposals for it now. It was recently rehabbed as being used for, as accessory to Flushing Town Hall. But we are again considering whether it makes sense to keep the commercial overlay on what is a very large development site in the midst of a commercial neighborhood. And with that, this will go to a public hearing on Wednesday.
Item number 6 on your agenda on page 162 is the South Avenue retail development in Staten Island, which involves several street demappings and a special permit to facilitate the construction of a new shopping center. Roselle Leader is here to present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. These are 2 applications by a private applicant returning for public pre-hearing review after review by Community Board 1 and Staten Island Borough President. So as a brief overview, the development site outlined in red is a vacant 28-acre parcel at the intersection of South and Forest Avenues in the western end of Community District 1 in the Mariners Harbor neighborhood. The project area outlined in orange includes mapped but unbuilt streets as highlighted in yellow. The surrounding area includes large areas of public and privately owned wetlands. As shown on the zoning map, the site is located in an M11 district. Without the requested special permit, use group 6 and 10A uses are limited to under 10,000 square feet of floor area. The applicant proposes an approximately 220,000 square foot retail development with 838 parking spaces. In accordance with the New York State DEC requirements, the applicant proposes to preserve 11 acres of mapped wetlands and adjacent areas on the development site. The green areas at the southern end of the development site show wetland areas to be preserved and the landscape buffer between these wetlands and the retail development. Forest Avenue and South Avenue are both truck routes. The applicant proposes new signalized entrances on South Avenue, which is here, and another signalized entrance here, which is at Forest Avenue leading down the new North Morrow realigned street. An additional unsignalized entrance is proposed for right-in turn and right-out turn on Forest Avenue. The applicant is requesting a special permit to allow large retail establishments with over 10,000 square feet of floor area. As noted on the drawing, 5 of the proposed 7 buildings exceed the 10,000 square feet and would require the special permit. The applicant notes that these buildings would accommodate a mix of retail uses, including a supermarket and a proposed BJ's Warehouse Club. The applicant is also requesting a city map amendment to remove mapped but unbuilt streets from the city map as noted in yellow. The applicant proposes to realign the existing North Morrow Street to allow it to intersect with an existing traffic light on Forest Avenue. Garrett Street is proposed to be removed within the development site to allow the retail development. Other streets are proposed to be removed since they are located over existing mapped wetlands beyond the development site, beyond the area outlined in red. So the applications were certified on June 5th and were referred out. At the full board meeting of Community Board 1 on June 13th, there was a motion that was disapproved. The motion was disapproved 17-14-5, with the abstentions tallying in with the no votes. Okay. So the borough president's recommended approval with conditions that Morrow Street be widened and realigned and open to public use with a maintenance agreement, that there be a curb cut to Wimble Street and an operational plan with delivery schedules and proposed truck routes. Also that the wetland and adjacent areas be tied to the larger Graniteville Swamp Park to the south. Also, the project is to be designed to locate development footprint wholly outside of the New York State DEC regulated wetlands, have no adverse effects on existing wetlands, storm surge protection, storm water attenuation, or exacerbate storm water runoff, and that it will not result in increased flooding potential. Also, the project is to be designed to comply with all requirements for street trees, building permit, building pavement plan, and stormwater management. The applicant team met with the borough president's office and discussed the conditions. They have prepared a letter to the borough president, which is in your package, and it summarizes the result of the meeting. So in summary, those are the two city planning actions that are being requested to facilitate this retail development proposal.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Cantor?
Ladies first.
Commissioner Bessa?
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions. So to summarize the letter from the applicant, basically the applicant is agreeing to satisfy all of the borough president's conditions.
Essentially, I think the answer to that.
I don't want to speak for the Borough Hall, but my understanding is the Borough Public Land Use Director has informed me that he is comfortable with the response they received from the applicant. So the applicant can also attest to that on Wednesday public hearing.
Okay, and then there's a letter from protectors of Pine Oak Woods. So I'm just curious to know what the department's position is on the issues that were raised in this letter.
I don't have the letter in front of me. I would believe that the applicant will be responding to the response in our Wednesday public hearing also.
And as of right, what could be built at this location?
So as of right, that would be without the special permit, and so the buildings, it would still be in the M1 district, and retail would be allowed. There would be, if there's no mapping amendment, Garrick Street, which goes through the site about like that, would have to be opened in connection with a development on the site. The areas that New York State DEC required to be preserved would still have to be preserved. They would actually have to go back to New York State DEC and work out what the revised proposal would be.
I would note that zoning does allow as-of-right development, and the applicant would probably respond as to what they would build under that scenario, but they would still have to meet DEC regulations.
Thank you.
The one other thing I would note is that the buildings would be smaller because the special permit is for more than 10,000 square feet. Other, Commissioner Cantor.
Thank you. Question, two questions. The infrastructure that they were addressing as being revised, who's paying for it? The street relocation.
In the borough president's letter, Your Honor?
In the stuff I see over here, there's a reference to Morrow Street to be realigned in blue.
Yeah, the applicant is donating a little more than 8,000 square feet to the city so that that street can be widened.
So the work is to be done by the city, correct?
The applicant can
The applicant-
address that on Wednesday. They have, I believe the applicant will be responsible for maintaining it once it's built. I don't have the answer to who is actually building it.
The reason for my questioning on this one is, I don't know how critical this realignment in terms of function of the new facilities. But I also see 800 some odd cars, and I don't see anything regarding traffic studies.
The environmental review did deal with traffic analysis. And
can
there
you
are
give us-
some
can you give us an
mitigation.
executive summary?
I can't hear you.
Can you give us an executive summary?
We can
Supply that, yeah.
Or
And
we could,
the
if we could ask the applicant to be prepared on Wednesday. Commissioner Besser.
I'm sorry. And as far as the community board count, with their vote, can you just
What happened?
So
explain that a little bit more?
at the full board, the community board voted 17 to approve, 14 to disapprove, 14 no votes, and 5 abstentions. But the 5 abstentions were combined with the no votes to ultimately result in a disapproved motion.
I would also note that there were a number of residents who did attend the full board meeting, raised a number of concerns, issues related to flooding concerns, issues related to traffic, and concerns about competition with local businesses in the area.
And they would also like, if possible, for the property to be purchased somehow and made preserved as an open space, because of the kinds of comments they made.
Commissioner Cirillo.
Just a quick question regarding that last point. And I can't recall if I saw anything in this, but certainly not the first time that kind of a desire and potentially request has been made when there's development and there's natural areas. Do we know if there's been any formal discussions about that, about purchasing the land with any of the elected officials or the community at any level of government? Do we know that?
I don't believe there has been any discussion between the applicant to sell the property.
Okay.
Certainly the city has not signed the budget.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Levin.
But on the motion that the community board voted on, the only condition in that motion has to do with tractor trailers using Forest Avenue. So were all the other issues that Len just enumerated as having been spoken of at the meeting, those were kind of put aside by the community board, and the one issue they were focused on was truck deliveries, which is obviously an important one?
I would note that there were a number of people who did attend the meeting, raised a lot of concerns, but that was the only item that the board addressed.
Chose to put in their motion to put before the group. Okay.
Yeah. Let me clarify that the motion, the tractor trailer issue was in the land use motion, not the full board motion.
Oh, really?
It was carried over from the land use to the full board.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Kent?
Stand corrected, sorry.
Glenn, why was there a 14 vote count, negative vote?
I
What
think
was
that,
it? Do we have a reason for the high negative vote count?
I think that was due to the response to the number of individuals that attended the full board meeting, raised concerns about flood zones, local competition and traffic.
And that caused the large number of no votes?
That's what we suspect.
And was there, in your judgment, sufficient understanding by those who voted yes? Was it a pretty close vote?
It was a close vote. I don't want to try and guess as to what they were actually, what their assumptions were, but I would imagine those are good questions to ask the applicants. And we imagine that if those speakers will be attending on Wednesday, you can ask their questions directly.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Hi. You know, I do note there's a lot of concern about, you know, stormwater and flooding, reasonably so. You know, we're going to have 838 spaces of parking, and much of that will be non-permeable ground cover. You know, there's a mention in here that the site plan includes planting islands and bioswales. How are those commitments memorialized? How do we ensure that, and maybe this is just procedural, but could you explain that to me?
I believe that after, if the project is successful and they get City Planning Commission approval, they have to work with the Department of Buildings to do the bioswales, have a plan for how the bioswales will work.
But is that included in our report?
There are a number of DEC regulations that they'll have to follow as part of after our approvals.
Right.
After the commission's actions, I should say.
But is that included in our report? Does some of it, can some of it make it into our report?
Well, they are, let me say, they are regulations of zoning zoning resolution. And so they are the landscape parking requirements.
So let me be clear, the borough president is not requesting anything above and beyond what is already required by zoning?
I don't believe so. I believe his conditions were memorializing what has been discussed with the project.
That's already required in zoning?
Exactly.
In zoning and by DEC.
Yes.
And I would know these are all good questions that the applicant can respond to on Wednesday also, to give more information.
Okay.
The other thing, Commissioner Ortiz, is we can, in our report, as part of the consideration, note the importance that we place on these bioswales as yet another way of emphasizing, as the borough president did, the weight that we place on these zoning requirements.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Besser?
I'm sorry. So if this is approved, how many jobs would be created as a result?
In terms of, we have been informed that, yes,
5, 7?
in terms of permanent jobs, 440 are expected, and construction, 800 to 1,000.
Commissioner Deleuze?
I'm just noting in the background about the 2015 DEC signed off on the current site plan as being in substantial accordance with their 2012 sign off. Do we have a copy of that? Or can the applicant perhaps provide a copy of that?
We can ask.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, this will go to the public hearing on Wednesday. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, Commissioner Cantor.
Is the applicant going to have
Make sure they will be here.
Next item is item number 7 on the agenda, also coming back for pre-hearing, is 1675 Westchester Avenue rezoning. It's a zoning text and map changes to facilitate a new 13-story residential building with retail use and community facilities on the ground floor. Justin Lamorello of the Bronx office will present the proposal.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This application was certified by the Commission on May 22nd and is now returning for pre-hearing. The proposal is for a zoning map change from R6 to R8A, from R6 to R8A with a C24 overlay at 1675 Westchester in the Bronx. It also includes a zoning text amendment to Appendix F for MIH. These actions would facilitate the development of a mixed-use building with approximately 220 units of affordable housing. The applicant is a joint venture between Phipps Houses and the Acacia Network called 1675 JV Associates LLC. The proposal is within the Bronx, Community District 9. And to give some context, the property is located along the elevated 6 train line along Westchester Avenue. The closest subway station is 2 blocks west at the Morrison Avenue Soundview Station. The property is located at the intersection of 2 wide streets, Westchester Avenue and Metcalf Avenue. Westchester is a major east-west corridor in the Bronx. Also located parallel to Metcalf Avenue is the Bronx River Parkway, a north-south limited access highway. And in this area, the Bronx River Parkway is below grade. The site sits across from a shopping plaza, including a fine fare supermarket, drugstore, and a post office. And to the west, beyond the Bronx River Parkway, along Westchester Avenue, is an active retail corridor. Beyond that, the area is mostly residential with a mix of semi-attached and attached 1- and 2-family residences, as well as larger apartment buildings. You can see in this photo Bronx River houses in the background and the 20-story Bradford building in the right-hand corner. Just to give some more context, the top photo here shows the development site on the left-hand side of the top photo, underneath the elevated 6 train line. On the right is the existing wine and liquor store and dry cleaner. Photo 2 on the bottom is Metcalf Avenue, looking south towards the elevated train. On the left side would be the development site, and on the right, the Bronx River Parkway. Photo 3 at the top here is along the elevated 6 train line on Westchester. Bronx River Parkway is to the left, Fine Fare Supermarket and shopping centers to the right. You can see where the stars would be the development site. And photo 4 is a closer version of that photo at the corner of Metcalf Avenue and Westchester Avenue. And just to give some more context, the area in discussion today is located within the red border on the map. The proposed development would construct a 13-story mixed-use building with a height of 132 feet. The ground floor would include commercial retail space along Westchester Avenue and community facility space along Metcalf Avenue. The remainder 12 stories would include residential with up to 220 units of affordable housing. And the building would be designed as a passive house, meaning it would maximize energy efficiency through design. Again, the proposed actions would rezone the area to R8A with a C24 overlay. The applicant is also seeking a text amendment to Appendix F to designate the project area as an MIH area with option 2. And so this would guarantee that 30% of units be designated up to 80% AMI. For this project, that would mean approximately 66 units would be permanently affordable. And the applicant is currently proposing AMIs around 30% AMI up to 100% AMI. So this application was certified on May 22nd. The Community Board 9 held a public hearing on this item on June 14th, and on June 15th, they voted to approve with conditions, with 13 votes in favor, 1 against, and 3 abstaining. Those conditions, which fall outside the purview of land use, include to add a senior veteran preference, to ensure up to 25% of construction workers are residents of Community District 9 and/or the Bronx, to commit to creating high-quality service jobs that pay union standard wages and benefits, to contribute funds yearly to a local park, school, and youth community policing initiative for 60 years, and to set aside up to 6,000 square feet of the future community facility space for Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, a local community organization. and the applicant can explain their commitments to these conditions at the public hearing on Wednesday. The Bronx Borough President also submitted a recommendation to approve this application on July 18th of this year. So in conclusion, the actions to rezone this area and apply MIH would permit the development of approximately 222 units of affordable housing, 30% of which would be permanently affordable. Thank you.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Arfon.
I think this was another one where I and perhaps another commissioner asked at certification about why the jump up to R8A as opposed to something lower, which is more in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. But in addition to that question, which perhaps you want to address, or I would hope could be addressed at the hearing on Wednesday, I'm also curious now that this rendering is here, what the view from the lower scale residential neighborhood looks at. So I would say the flip side of this view of the building.
Right. I don't have that photo as part of this deck, and I don't think there's a rendering that would show it from this direction, but I think the applicant kind of explained. The proposed development would sit at the corner, and so there is space provided kind of as a buffer between as part of the rear yard that's required through zoning. But we can ask the applicant to further explain what that view and condition would look like.
Justin, could you go back to the context slide? Because I think that's helpful in explaining. When the mayor moved City Hall to the Bronx, I had the opportunity to look at this site. And I think this is an example of the fact that we look at proposals from a planning perspective on a site-by-site basis, and this is quite a site. It is on Westchester Avenue, which is a wide street, and also has the elevated train. And to say that it's a wide street on the other side is an understatement, because it is Metcalf and then the Cross Bronx, and it is, 350 feet before you get to the next building to the left. And when one looks at a location for housing across the street from a supermarket, which is a real opportunity, since large areas of the Bronx are called food deserts, the shopping center and a 20-story building there, we certainly believed that this was a site that could take density and would be helpful in meeting our affordable housing goals, but it was very specific to this site on two such wide streets, the elevated train, and a 20-story building in the neighborhood. So those were some of the considerations.
I respect that enormously. I was just trying to understand if the wide street, specifically Westchester Avenue, played against that theory, only in that it's very far away from the commercial space and very much in a low-scale residential neighborhood. So that was one question I had. But thank you for the clarification about Metcalf. And yes, it is a transit-rich neighborhood, which is something we should be leveraging at every possible opportunity. Agreed.
Other comments? Yes, Commissioner Deleuze.
Justin, when this comes to us on Wednesday, it'd be helpful if, or maybe you have some of this now, any unit mix information. I mean, obviously the range of AMIs is pretty broad, and there's kind of a comment about, and some units will be at 100% of AMI. It would be helpful to know what the proposed mix at the various AMI levels is. I'm assuming they're talking to HPD, and I saw HDC, so they're going to take advantage of existing programs. It'd be helpful to know what those are or anticipated to be.
Right. I do not have the exact breakdown with me. I think because the new term sheets have recently come out, they're still working through that, but I can ask the applicant to provide that.
And if I might, to the extent that FIPS and Acacia are thinking of accommodating some of the requests from the community board, especially for the 6,000 square feet for YMPJ, if that's likely to happen, it would be helpful to know what YMPJ is likely to use that space for.
Okay, noted. We will look into that.
Commissioner Cantor.
Thank you. How far back from Westchester Avenue is the unit in the building?
It would sit right on Westchester Avenue.
And how far, I don't know which way is north coming from?
So this is Westchester Avenue, and north would be this direction.
It doesn't really matter what we're looking at. It's one side is near the Westchester Avenue. The other side, how close is it to those low-rise buildings around them? And in totality, it's the only tall building in the area. But how close will it be to the houses immediately towards the top of the sheet?
So you're saying the distance over here on Metcalf Avenue?
Yeah, the back of the building. The back of the building, how close is that to the low rise immediately adjacent to?
No, I'd have to look into it, and we can get you the exact number for Wednesday.
Aside from the tower on the right side of the noise and contact, just the chair over this is going to be another sore thumb sticking up in the air.
Are you asking, will it be in context with the area, or?
Yeah, where is it in context with the area? I see everything around here is really low, with the exception of that one building on the right, the high rise, because it's one story building.
Right, this is the 20-story building. There are some larger buildings off of Westchester here to the west.
On the other side of the park.
On the other side of the parkway, and there are some, walk-up buildings and larger apartment buildings throughout the neighborhood.
But fundamentally, this is what the finger is looking at, low-rise neighborhood.
Well, I think that the condition along the Parkway and Westchester Avenue and with the shopping center across with it makes it unique in that way within the neighborhood. And so would really be be at the corner of that condition.
Has the community board thought about reacting to this? With respect to the impact on the contents of the area?
As part of their approval with conditions, that was not something that they addressed.
I would just also add that, good afternoon, that, this is an area, the Westchester Avenue corridor, that Community Board 9 has identified as an area where they'd like to see growth. The zoning that's here has been in place for 55 years now. And so this, again, is a very specific site. If you're able to go out to the site, it does feel like a void right now. And you have successful retail across the Bronx River Parkway, and you have the subway station west of the site as well across the Bronx River Parkway. And if you look at the site, and we can share renderings that show how it does interact with how it does step down and interact with the buildings behind it when the applicant comes on Wednesday. But I think for the sake of the site, again, there's a very unique planning rationale that would be able to fill this void, bring over some of that retail, as well as connect to that subway station there.
Yes, Commissioner Levin.
I've been pondering all of these same questions. I noticed the borough president is pondering them as well. There's a nice paragraph in his recommendation to us, sort of balancing all these things and coming out largely in the same place that the chair identified. But all of this really puts pressure on good urban design to make this work in this neighborhood. So I would be interested in hearing, I assume that the project architect is coming on Wednesday. I'd be interested in hearing one, how they're responding to the elevated train that will be running across one facade and what's quality of life going to be for folks living in those units. And two, what design features they're building in to sort of mitigate the scale of this thing, and especially on the backside. Because that backside, as Commissioner Cantor pointed out, will be exposed for a long time to come. So having quality design on the back side of the building is just as important as having it on the front side.
Sure. Thank you. And I would just also add that, every time these projects come through, our office is working with the applicant, before it gets here for a while, and our urban design team and technical staff are pushing them on that design as well. So by the time it gets here, it's in a good place, and they should be able to address that.
Okay, well, if you can show us a picture of the other side, show us what we're not seeing, that'll help.
Did you have additional questions, Commissioner Cantor?
No, thank you.
Others? Okay, another interesting public hearing coming up on Wednesday.
Moving to item for certification, first on item number 8 is the Iola Jordan Daycare Center in the Bronx. It's for the acquisition of a building for continued use of a daycare center. Dana Driscoll of the Bronx office is here to tell us about it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Administration for Children's Services and DCAS are co-applicants. This is a proposal for the acquisition of, 421 East 161st Street, which is block 2383, lot number 12. And this action would facilitate continued operation of the Iola Jordan Daycare Center, which has been operating at the site for more than 30 years. The project site is in the Melrose neighborhood of Community District 3. It's zone R8 with the C14 overlay along its 161st Street frontage. It's a through lot, and the back portion of the zoning lot is zone R72. This is a mixed-use area east of the government center section of the Bronx, and to the west is the Bronx Criminal Courthouse, the Concourse Plaza Mall, Bronx Borough Hall, and the new Yankee Stadium. Boricua College is to the right, to the east, neighborhood landmark, and this project is not part of, but immediately north of the Melrose Commons urban renewal area. This is a shot of the building facade. The property is privately owned. It was built in 1916 as the Melrose Movie Theater, which had capacity for 1,000 viewers and a rooftop open-air screening facility. In the 1940s, the use of the property transitioned, became known as the Embassy Ballroom, which was a very well-known catering hall, concert facility, banquet hall in the South Bronx. It operated in that fashion until the early 1970s, and at that point and since has been in operation as a daycare facility. Here we're trying to show some of the remaining features of the property, including this frieze, which is dated May 1921. Some of the other architectural, this is a roof shot. And again, a very interesting building, which has gone through a number of changes in use, serving Bronx community. The building is a two-story building. It has 19,050 square feet of indoor space, and it has a 7,600 square foot rooftop area. There are, if I could, 2 points of access on 161st Street, and there is an accessible entrance on 162nd Street to the rear of the facility. This property was last subject of a lease approved by the Commission on December 15th, 1993, and again, for the last 30-plus years, has been used as a daycare facility. The facility has one classroom for toddlers, 5 classrooms for preschoolers on its second floor. There's no elevator. On the first floor, there are 3 rooms for preschoolers, 1 room for after-school or school-age clients. The administrative, management, maintenance, and food service areas are also on the ground floor. The facility has a capacity of 154 preschoolers and 25 school-age clients. The program hours, 8 a.m. through 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. The children are dropped off and picked up by their parents or caregivers. Most of the clientele are local to the area. There are no parking facilities. The program provides breakfast, lunch, and snack daily to every participant. They have what's called an Early Learn program as their main educational offering. This is the roof play area referenced. And they also have the supervised playtime, which is the main method of instruction through play, art, music, and hands-on working with crafts. We visited the program May 24th of this year. Usually, we say that we saw that there were no maintenance difficulties. Unfortunately, we can't say that in the context of this particular project. I believe one of your handouts includes the scope of work that DCAS has developed for the rehabilitation of this facility. Again, I'd say last month, we certified a project called Sheltering Arms, which is a relatively new kind of state-of-the-art facility, great amenities, etc. This one is one of our oldest and most well-worn facilities, and the scope of services that you see in the addition is a response to the major concerns that are in the project. The program providers did have some criticisms of the management, the role of the landlord in the operation of the facility, and what they felt to be lack of upkeep and maintenance. The scope of work is an attempt to respond to those concerns, and you can see that it is a very nearly major overhaul of the facility. I think that's fair to say. The DCAS has proposed a 10-year lease term for this facility. In addition, at the option of DCAS and ACS, there are available 2 5-year lease renewals. So again, the term of the lease is 10 years, but effectively, I think it's fair to say DCAS has the ability to retain the project for 20 years before the commission, I guess, would get another chance at review. And there's a staff of 40 professional, administrative, and support staff. The facility has capacity for up to 120 preschoolers, 20 school-age children. And I'm pleased to take any questions.
I do want to note that we are seeing today 2 lease renewals that could not be more different as far as the state of repair. The next one that comes up is one of the crown jewels. Usually you will see, or what you'll hear in the presentations, that the city planning team will say that they found the facility to be in a state of good repair. We cannot say that in this instance, though we do hasten to add that we did not see safety issues, but obviously the need for a very significant upgrade, but thought it important to bring this to the commission to get the input and to, we hope, coming out of this process, seeing a very marked upgrade. Usually, in many instances, we look at the building and you can tell that it was purpose-built to be a child care center, and there's a certain sameness about them. This one is, again, at the opposite end of the spectrum, a beautiful building, but one where, because of its age and configuration, can be a challenge for a child care center. Vice Chair Knuckles?
Well, just an observation. This is obviously an old warhorse of a building, and notwithstanding the availability of this space beyond 10 years, I would hope personally that this would be the last lease that the Iola Jordan Daycare Center does at this particular space. I think it's unfortunate, given all of the development that's happened in Melrose, that DCAS couldn't find an opportunity in community facility space somewhere along that 161st Street corridor. I know you know, Dana, there's been a lot done and there's a lot going on. So, I mean, the spaces, at least the pictures, you know, don't seem to, I wouldn't say it's an oppressive space, but again, I think this should be at the end of the cycle for this particular function in this building.
I think the process of rehab may force DCAS to address some questions. We'll clarify before the hearing what are going to be the interim plans for the clientele while the rehabilitation process is underway.
Well, that's an equally compelling question, yeah.
Commissioner Money?
I just want to follow Commissioner Knuckles' line of questioning because, you know, there have been a couple of developments presented in this Merrill's area where retail has, a commercial overlay has been approved as part of the development. And all throughout the process, I think I've expressed concern, I certainly know Commissioner Ortiz has expressed concern because those commercial storefronts are just sitting there. Nothing's happening to them. There's some that are empty, right? It's a perfect opportunity, as Commissioner Knuckles said, to relocate the center and then maybe have something else, some other use for this property or even higher and better use. Because we're pumping money into this facility and for 10 years and it just doesn't seem as prudent and wise as we could be in terms of.
It's significantly longer than 10 years.
There's a lot of new facilities coming online. As a matter of fact, there's 2 brand new buildings coming right next to this. There's the courthouse that has empty space. Food for thought.
Thank you. So we're holding a scope of work that was originally dated June 11th of 2015 on this location, which says revised this month, June of 2017.
Okay.
It's not clear exactly how it was revised, because it doesn't distinguish between something old and something new. But I guess the question I have is, since this is a continuing operation as a daycare center, some of these things are sort of longer term, do the roof over, obviously assuming there's no emergencies to do the roof faster. But some of the things on here are replace broken windows, exit signs and lighting to be replaced. More, I would say, immediate, critical issues that shouldn't be in existence for more than whatever moment they happen to when they can be corrected as soon as possible. They were on a 2015 list. I'm just wondering, since it's not clear if some of these things have been completed in this process or not, or is this still an active scope of work for the last 2 years where things as simple as broken windows have not been repaired?
When we did our tour, the operator expressed some skepticism about the operation of the landlord.
Uh-huh.
And in turn, the landlord has represented that he can't make the repairs unless and until he gets a renewal commitment. And that's.
So windows are only part, okay.
We will try to clarify, again, I'm hoping these are different windows than the 2015 windows.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting. Well, I know this is just being certified, so I guess we'll see as this process continues, but I would certainly suggest that the things that shouldn't be a part of anybody's quality of life get corrected as soon as possible, so that it doesn't embarrass them in the process when they come back. So, anyway, thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
I agree with everything my really smart and well-spoken fellow commissioners have said. I mean, the idea that there isn't thermostat control and perimeter radiators in a daycare center leads me to believe that there should be a thorough investigation of whether the landlord is the appropriate landlord for a childcare center.
Yes, Commissioner Patrick.
I would hope that the prepared to give us a complete indication what they studied as an alternate to this parcel.
I'm sorry?
With all the comments that you've heard from the commissioners,
Right.
I guess my question is, did they consider elsewhere? And if so, why not? And if yes, why they determined to stay here, considering all the negatives that we've been hearing?
We will identify the alternatives that were considered.
Any other questions? I don't think this is one that leaves us, that has us leaving feeling lighthearted, although I do think that certifying this and getting it into the public review process is the beginning of making positive changes for the kids who are served by this center. So with that, we'll certify this application.
Item number 9 on page 242 of your agenda is the Friends of Crown Heights 2 Childcare Center. This is also for acquisition of a building for continued use as a daycare center. This building is in Brooklyn, and Samadi Nayak of our Brooklyn office is here to talk about it.
Good afternoon. The ACS and DCAS is seeking acquisition via lease renewal of an existing building to facilitate the continued operation of a child care center in Crown Heights North neighborhood in Brooklyn's Community District 8. This is a privately owned facility. It was leased by the city since 1974. The previous acquisition was approved by City Council in December of 1994. The lease expired in February of 2015. And DCAS is working on the new lease, and currently the site is on a month-to-month lease. The facility is located on Prospect Place between Franklin Avenue and Bedford Avenue. The surrounding area is residential. Franklin Avenue is the major retail corridor of this neighborhood, and Bedford Avenue is a wide street with mostly residential and some community facility and retail on the side streets. It is the facility is very well served by mass transit. The 2, 3, 4, 5 subway lines is just 5 blocks to the south along Empire Boulevard, and the C line stops 7 blocks north along Fulton. And there's a Franklin Avenue shuttle which runs along the Franklin Avenue, and there are a number of bus services just a couple of blocks from the site. The Childcare Center, the main entrance is along Prospect Place, and there's a side entrance or the service or vehicular entrance along Bedford Avenue. So this is the building. It's a 2-story building with a cellar. It's approximately 32,000 square feet, which includes 14 classrooms spread over across the first, second, and cellar, and also storage facilities and offices. The headquarters of Crown Heights, the Friends of Crown Heights also operate from this facility. This is the main entrance from Prospect Place, and this is the service or a vehicular entrance from Bedford Avenue. This is the front landscape lawn fronting Prospect Place. This is and some of the pictures. So we visited the site on June 27, along with ACS staff and the project manager of this facility. Found it to be in a very good state. Some pictures which show the lobby, the classrooms. There's a side at-grade play area adjacent to the facility, which is on site. And these are pictures of the roof. It's approximately 8,000 square feet of rooftop play area. It's huge. It's also in a good condition. And there's a large multi-purpose hall, which was renovated in 2002 as a part of capital project. It's used for multiple purposes, after school, for the daycare facility, and also used by elected officials and agencies. And that's it.
Questions? Commissioner Cantor.
Yeah. Did I understand you to say that this facility has been occupied by the city since 1974?
Yes, it's been leased by the city.
That's 40 some odd years. Why are we going into a renew lease on a building that's 40 some odd years old? What is the condition to follow up on Commissioner Efron's question early on? Where are we in the HVAC area? Where are we in the accessibility area? Where are we in the past 40 years, or since the past 40 years? How does this building stack up? Why are we going into that building when we might find logic in going into a more modern building to begin with?
So my understanding is that DCAS is currently doing a short-term lease because that is what the landlord is willing to commit, and in the meanwhile they are trying to go for a long-term lease, negotiating a long-term lease for the site. I don't know the answer about why they are.
Once again, when you talk about a long-term lease, it's back to my question. You're starting with a 40-year-old building. what has been done to the building in terms of yesterday versus today, in terms of the heating, ventilating, air conditioning systems, all the other systems. Everything has long since been superseded code-wise. And I'm curious as to why this building is so intriguing.
Commissioner Cantor, it strikes me that those are questions that we could pose to DCAS, and so that they would be prepared when it comes back to us to answer questions about the integrity of the systems and also what their process was for determining to renew rather than seek an alternative site.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Delahoo's.
I mean, I would just note, especially since you commented, was it 2012 that you said that this multipurpose room was updated? That's a pretty, I'm assuming that was a pretty significant investment that the city entered into, and there's probably significant covenants related to the owner and that use of that space. That would be helpful just to understand as well.
Other comments, questions? Okay, so this item will travel in tandem and will be certified.
Item number 10 on page 262 of your package is 587 Bergen Street, which is zoning text map changes to facilitate a new residential building in Brooklyn. Jonah Rogoff of the Brooklyn office will present this for certification.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by 1121 of Delaware, LLC, the applicant, for a zoning map amendment to rezone an M1-1 district to an R6B district, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area to facilitate a 4-story residential development totaling approximately 27,300 square feet, including 26 residential units and 10 of which would be affordable. The project area is located in the Prospect Heights neighborhood of Brooklyn, Community District 8, and bounded by Dean Street to the north, Vanderbilt Avenue to the east, Bergen Street to the south, and Carlton Avenue to the west. The surrounding area is predominantly residential with limited commercial and industrial uses. As you can see here, east of the project area are 1 to 2-story warehouses and some commercial and light industrial buildings. A large portion of the surrounding area, shown here in a dark shade, is part of the Prospect Heights Historic District, which was designated in 2009. Much of this area was rezoned from R6 to R6B as part of the Prospect Heights area-wide rezoning in 1993. Shown here in the bird's eye view, you can see the project area, which is outlined in yellow, or the rezoning area, and the development site in a red dashed line. North of the project area is one of the Pacific Park sites, which is an Empire State Development Corporation project encompassing multiple blocks and 22 acres, including the Barclays Center Arena and an 18-story development across the street to the north, which is currently under construction. The project area's immediate context includes 2 to 3-story row houses adjacent to the west, a 3-story mixed commercial building to the north, and a single-story warehouse to the east. The project area is well served by public transit. The subway lines for the 2 and 3 and BQ are both located less than 3 blocks away, while there are also several bus lines nearby. The project area boundaries would extend an existing R6B district over a greater portion of block 1137 and include 8 tax lots. Along the Bergen Street frontage, the project area would include the development site outlined in red on lots 77, 81, and 82. Along the Dean Street frontage, the area would include a portion of a 1-story warehouse on lot 18 and 3 2-story 2-family row houses on lots 15, 16, and 17 here, which are currently non-conforming residential uses. The project area is currently mapped with an M1-1 zoning district, which is a manufacturing district that permits commercial and industrial uses as well as limited community facility uses. New residential use is not permitted as of right. The maximum FAR for commercial and industrial use is 1.0, and the maximum FAR for commercial, community facility use is 2.4. And then just for some context here, a few site photos. So these top two photos are facing south, and that's the Prospect Heights Historic District character located across the street. The photo on the bottom left shows the view of the development site. You can see one of the Pacific Park developments in the background, and then the three-story row house to the west. And then this is a view of the Dean Street frontage. These are the row houses that are non-conforming. And then this is a view of the edge of Pacific Park, which is under construction. And then finally, a view of the development site itself with the commercial building in the background, and then just another view showing one of the other Pacific Park sites. The development site is slightly irregularly shaped and consists of 3 tax lots. It's historically been an unimproved paved parcel of land used for storage and parking. Currently, the site is vacant and occasionally used as a surface parking lot and open-air storage. The applicant proposes to develop a 4-story residential building with approximately 27,300 square feet of floor area with a base height of 38 feet, followed by a 15-foot setback before rising to a building height of 50 feet. The proposed development would contain 26 dwelling units, 10 of which would be affordable under option 2 of the mandatory inclusionary housing program, which requires 30% of the residential floor area to be permanently affordable at an average of 80% of the area median income, or AMI. In addition, 13 enclosed parking spaces are to be located at the cellar level, along with 13 bicycle parking spaces. There's also an illustrative massing showing the development's envelope, which seeks to match the block's row house character. Here's also, for reference, an illustrative site plan showing the development's footprint and lot boundaries in context with adjacent buildings. The proposed development would comply with R6B district regulations, which allow maximum FAR of 2.2 for residential use when mapped within an inclusionary housing area, a minimum and maximum base height of 30 and 40 feet respectively, and a maximum building height of 50 feet. These height limits may also be increased by 5 feet for a qualifying ground floor. R6B districts also have contextual provisions that require a development to line up with the street wall of an adjacent building. Off-street parking is generally required for 50% of the dwelling units. However, off-street parking is not required for affordable units within the transit zone. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant requests 2 actions, a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment. The zoning map amendment would extend an existing R6B district 50 feet along Bergen Street and 100 feet along Dean Street, as well as align the boundary with the block center line in order to both cover the development sites and bring 3 residential buildings along Dean Street into conformance with zoning. Here's another view of the tax map to clearly view the boundaries. According to the applicant, the proposed zoning map change is consistent with the residential character of adjacent buildings and surrounding blocks. In addition, the applicant seeks a zoning text amendment to create an MIH area under options 1 and 2 in order to ensure a portion of the units remain affordable. To conclude, the applicant states that both actions will support the redevelopment of a historically underutilized site and also bring additional housing and specifically affordable housing to the Prospect Heights neighborhood. That concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Funk.
I have one question about the Dean Street side. There are 3 row houses, but it's sort of hard to tell from the photos, and only because there looks as if there's a lot of the same width. Is there a 4th house that's on that Dean Street side and just outside of the rezoning? Or are there only 3 houses?
There are only 3. So one is on the front facade is being renovated. So there, you can see like the stoops.
Okay, and then there's a very skinny lot that looks like it's the same width, and then there is a much wider lot. So there are only 3 houses on Dean Street.
That's right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delos?
Do we happen to know if the applicant has been trying to acquire the adjacent sites? Well, in particular, I'm thinking about the garage site on Bergen Street that's to the east.
Not to my knowledge, this garage site is actually connected to the commercial building. And this building was just renovated a few years ago, so, but I'll relay that to the applicant to confirm.
Okay. Commissioner Muddy?
Jonah, that's a building that's in the middle of the property?
Which building?
To the left of the site, and then right there, what is that?
This is, it's, let me go to the, so it's actually an L-shaped plot. And it's a 1-story garage that kind of extends, it's part of this commercial building.
Got it.
But it kind of extends into here. And I think it might be, sorry for jumping around.
No,
you can kind of see.
You had another photo as well where you can see a building in the background. I didn't remember which slide it was. It's the reddish brick building. Is that the? No, not that one. Right there, the upper left-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
That red building that you're pointing to exactly. So that's a building that sits into the interior of the block.
That's right.
Okay, and then it's accessed. Is there an access to it, or it just access it from the other building?
The access is from Dean Street.
Gotcha.
So it's, yeah, success.
Thanks.
It's right here.
Commissioner Levin?
Yeah, I have a affordable housing question and then a question about the BSA variances. The briefing sheet indicates that we're looking at 26 total residential units, of which 10 would be affordable, but if you do the math on that, that's 39% of the units. Are they going beyond the affordability required, or is it actually 30% of the floor area?
It's 30% of the floor area.
So that means that the affordable units are a lot smaller than the market rate units?
I'll confirm the size, but the market rate units are slightly larger. I think they're about 1,200 square feet. I could double check. And I included the floor plans in the briefing package.
Okay, well, so it would be interesting to understand how that matches up. And then maybe if you could go back to one of the tax lot maps or something. You indicate in the briefing sheet that since 2001, the BSA has granted variances to permit residential conversions. Where, along Dean Street? Where are they in relation to this rezoning area?
So one is located right here.
Uh-huh.
I think the other 2 are located, I'll have to double check, but they're on this side of the block.
Okay.
I think either here or here. They're smaller or narrower lots.
And they were just conversions of existing buildings, not new construction?
I believe all of them were, but I'll double check.
Okay, well, so I'm just curious about how the scale of that permitted residential use relates to the scale here. Is it R6B like or something different?
I'll confirm the FARs, but I believe all 3 of these BSA variances, the buildings are about, they're 4 stories, but I can confirm the height. But they're roughly in line with R6B in terms of the pole.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so the application is certified. Oh, I'm sorry, did I? Sorry, Commissioner Delos.
I'm just hoping that when it comes back, if we could get renderings, both of the Dean Street and the Bergen Street side, color renderings of both sides, because I'm only seeing really the Bergen side, is that right?
Well, the development is only on Bergen Street.
Okay, so it's just going to be the access point from that side? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the other thing that would be helpful to know when they come back is considering the construction of Atlantic Yards, how they plan to stage their construction.
Thanks.
Okay, so another application certified.
Item number 11, for pre-hearing review, the Pfizer rezoning, a zoning text and map changes to facilitate 8 new mixed-use buildings in Brooklyn. Zayed Ahmed is here to update the goings-on on the application.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application by Harrison Realty LLC for a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to facilitate a new mixed-use development of 1,146 apartments, including 287 permanently affordable units, 63,000 square feet of ground floor retail, and 26,000 square feet of public open space located in South Williamsburg Community District 1, Brooklyn. The two-block project site is bounded roughly by Union Avenue, Harrison Avenue, Union Avenue, Harrison Avenue, and Jerry Street near the intersection of Flushing Avenue. These blocks were previously occupied by the Pfizer Pharmaceutical Company, which closed their operations in Brooklyn in 2008 and sold their properties to private owners. The site is currently unimproved and used for open storage and surface parking. This area is well served by public transportation. The G line is at the corner of Union and Jerry Street, and J&M line, Lorimer Street subway station, is located 2 blocks to the east of the site, right over there. The surrounding area is primarily developed with 3 to 7-story multifamily buildings and row houses, community facilities, and some light industrial uses. The blocks immediately south of the project area contain a charter school, which is shown right here, and an accessory schoolyard right behind the building, a gas station, and the 8-story, 110-foot-high former Pfizer factory building, which is shown right here in purple, which includes commercial uses and light industrial uses. The applicant is proposing to develop the 2 blocks with 8 buildings containing 1,146 apartments, including 287 permanently affordable units, 63,000 square feet of ground floor retail, and 26,000 square feet of required public open space. The tallest buildings ranging from 7 to 14 stories, which is building A and H, are along Union Avenue. 4 8 to 11-story buildings would be located in the middle of the 2 blocks along the 65-foot wide public open space. Smaller 6 to 7-story buildings will be located along Harrison Avenue, that is buildings C and D. This is an image of a proposed 14-story building at the corner of Union Avenue and Jerry Street with ground floor commercial uses. And here, this is an image of 6 to 7-story buildings with ground floor commercial uses proposed along narrow Harrison Avenue. As part of the project, the applicant is required to provide 26,000 square feet of public open space, shown here. The space is 65 feet wide and 400 feet long, separated by Wallabout Street. The open space corridor would be landscaped with shade trees, planters, benches, and bicycle racks, and would be lined with ground floor retail uses. In order to facilitate the proposed project, the applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment from M31 to R7A, R7D, and R8A districts with C24 overlay, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Under MIH option 1, the development would have 25% of the residential floor area set aside for permanently affordable housing for households earning an average of 60% of AMI with no units exceeding 130% of AMI. An EIS was conducted, and the draft EIS identified potential adverse impacts related to intermediate schools and traffic. The applicant is in the process of exploring mitigation measures, which will be finalized prior to the City Planning Commission vote. Community Board 1 voted to approve the application. Community Board 1 held a public hearing on 6th of June and 13th of June. They voted to approve the application by a vote of 26 in favor, 15 opposed, and 1 abstention. In their recommendation, Community Board 1 noted that the critical need for permanently affordable housing in the area and asked the applicant to commit to local hiring and prevailing wages. In addition, the Community Board requested the applicant commit to working with local organizations to market the affordable units, give the Community Board prior notice for the housing lottery, and to prohibit bars in the new development. The applicant committed to the Community Board's request via letter, which is in your briefing package. The Bar President's Office submitted their recommendation last Friday and disapproved the application with modifications. The Bar President recommendations are the creation of a new voluntary inclusionary housing program via a new special permit proposed to increase the amount of affordable area, floor area in exchange for increasing densities from an R7A district to an R7D district, and that the proposed R8A district is conditioned on the applicant providing financing to the MTA to help reopen the northern entrance of the Flushing Avenue G train station and finance station improvements. The Borough President also requested that the applicant commit to providing a smaller bedroom mix of housing units, work with a combination of local nonprofit housing providers, expand building resiliency and sustainability measures, utilize local and minority and women business enterprises, contractors, implement street and pedestrian safety improvements, and add bioswales. And finally, the Borough President also recommended the modification of MIH to consider a housing lottery applicant's rent burdened status, that HPD would ensure local preference requirements extend to the residents of Community District 1, former residents of Community District 1 displaced by the 2005 Greenpoint Williamsburg rezoning, and to residents of CD3. That DOT study the feasibility of demapping Jerry Street in order to expand the amount of open space provided by the playground to the south, and that MTA reopen and upgrade stations and station entrances along Broadway. Thank you. That was the conclusion of my
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Dwight.
So I'll weigh in. Going to the Borough President's recommendations, can you talk to me about any conversations with the applicant regarding the unit mix and their response to the VP's recommendations? I know we just got it on Friday.
We got the recommendation Friday afternoon, and we haven't talked to the applicant yet about it, but they will be here on Wednesday responding to these.
Obviously, I'd like to hear from them on all the Borough President's concerns and
They are here and,
taking notes.
they are taking.
I won't repeat what's already been listed, but I said I won't repeat the concerns, but I'm looking for us to see some.
Yes, we will ask them to respond to our president's
Thank you so much.
recommendations.
Any other comments? Commissioner Levin.
Sad, I have a question about the open space. Given that this is simply a map change and an MIH text, it's a pretty, for a project that has gotten quite complicated, it's a pretty simple zoning action that we're being asked to undertake here. And we have to, of course, remember that whatever is shown here could actually turn out to be built something different, that all we're doing is being asked to put zoning designations on a map. But on the open space, the executive summary of the environmental study indicates that the dedicated publicly accessible open space is being provided as a condition for allowing a change in use, and that it will be nailed down in a restrictive declaration.
Yes.
How does that, I'm not familiar with that process, with a change like this triggering something that could end up in a restrictive declaration.
It is providing some, it is required open space, which is mitigating some of the anticipated, open space, deficiencies. And so applicant has agreed to enter into a restrictive deck, so this space would be, would always be open space at this location.
Except that their environmental work also says there's no open space impact. So, I mean, I'm happy that there's going to be a restrictive deck to protect this, but I'm just curious about how we got there.
There have been precedents for this, and for example, at the Rheingold rezoning, there's also a restricted deck for required open space as a way of mitigating an open space impact, or avoiding an open space.
Avoiding an open space. Yeah, I assumed that was the case here. Well, let's hope that this one takes a different path than Rheingold and a couple of other aspects, but never mind.
We should say that the open space there is actually being built out.
Oh, good. So then that gets to the question of, when you're looking at so many different buildings, and obviously a project that's going to be phased, how will the open space commitments for both construction and maintenance be carried out if the site gets broken into multiple ownerships?
They are not proposing a phased construction. They are proposing to build the whole thing as one project.
Well, then maybe I should phrase my question differently. If it's a number of different buildings, one could imagine a circumstance in which those buildings could have different ownership. If that happens, what does the restrictive declaration say about the maintenance, shared maintenance?
They're supposed to maintain it, build it, and maintain it, and the language of a restrictive deck hasn't been finalized yet, but I think we will address those issues, that when do they get their temporary certificate of occupancy, maybe they will be tied to the...
I'm actually thinking further down the road when, the beautiful thing got built and then it needs to be maintained, and then there are like 7 different people who say, oh, it's not my problem.
Right, so let us get back to you for post-hearing follow-up.
Okay.
With a better response.
Okay.
A more complete response.
Thank you.
We've seen this in other areas where there are these phasing maintenance questions, and so we'll want to make sure that we address the possibility, even if it's not the current intention, that this could be either built separately by different owners and/or maintained differently. Commissioner Efron.
Because it's labeled open space corridor, will the ultimate open space be a block through?
Yes.
So it has to be a block through?
It has to be a block through, and this is a fixed location for it.
Oh, it is fixed. I'm
It is
sorry.
fixed.
I
It
misunderstood
cannot
you.
be-
I thought you said the opposite. Okay.
No, it is fixed, it cannot be moved, and it would be tied with a restrictive deck to this location, the amount and the amenities of the open space, number of trees, benches, all of those amenities will be in the restrictive deck. So the location, the square footage, everything will be tied down.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cantor.
Thank you. Is it fair to assume that when we take this parcel and we subdivide it into, what's it, 6 or 7 parcels, there is nothing to prevent the applicant upon approval from peeling off parcels as he wishes, to whomever he wishes, at whatever prices he wishes, with no opportunity for the City Planning Commission in the future to have any say?
The way the zoning boundaries are drawn and the location of the open space limits pretty much what could happen. And what the applicant proposes is the most realistic scenario, whether it is built by one developer or two. You know,
Or 3 or 4.
yes, it wouldn't change what is being shown here. Pretty much that's the reasonable worst-case scenario here.
Well, I'm not sure what's being shown here. I guess that's part of my problem. But you referenced Rheingold, which took an awkward turn at the end. And I'm just asking, are we building ourselves into a Rheingold situation?
No. So, I almost regret bringing it up here. But remember, the difference here is that we have MIH, right? At Rheingold, we had voluntary inclusionary housing,
Understood.
right? And it was about the developer's commitment to build the affordable housing at Rheingold, which was in question as a result of voluntary. Here, the difference is that we have mandatory inclusionary housing. The developer, any developer, is required to provide affordable housing in accordance with the zoning resolution and HPD guidelines.
Why could he have not just done this as a large-scale development rather than peeling off parcels?
That was a choice of the development team, but I think as Syed has explained very well, is that the combination of zoning boundaries plus the required publicly accessible open space and the streets together work to create what is essentially a large-scale plan by limiting the site, the size, and setbacks of the buildings and uses.
But once again, as planned, they have the opportunity to either choose to keep the parcels and use them as they see fit, or to peel off the parcel.
Right, but the shape, the form is dictated by, again, the open space and the zoning districts and their height and setback regulations, so that the shape of the buildings, the massing of the buildings, would not be expected to be significantly different from what was shown in one of the images. I think it's the one, two prior. One more.
Winston, perhaps to elaborate on Winston?
Yes.
Perhaps to elaborate on Commissioner Cantor's question,
Certainly.
if, contrary to current plans, these properties were to be sold to multiple different people, the MIH requirement would apply to every single parcel.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Deleuze.
So following up on that, and this is really goes to the borough president's recommendation about it would be helpful to get the breakdown of what their proposal is related to the unit mix per building, and then specific which of those units would be the MIH units. And if they're in conversations, it'd be helpful to know if they plan to seek any subsidy whatsoever for the affordable units, and if so, which programs?
Applicant will be here on Wednesday and will be answering these questions. They have not provided the bedroom mix to us, and yet we are not aware of it.
Clock's ticking.
Commissioner Cantor.
If they broke it up the way they propose with the different parcels, is it possible, conceivable, that they could put all the MIH in one quadrant and do as they choose elsewhere?
No, MIH regs require that they will be mixed with market rate housing in every building. So there are 8 buildings on the site, so proportionally the units, affordable units, will be in each building.
Well, there's 8 buildings on the site, I understand that. But if he were to sell off a parcel, or to designate a parcel for the MIH,
No.
Make the whole thing's MIH.
Yeah.
it's all they cannot
No,
do
they
that.
cannot do that, no.
Okay.
Other questions in anticipation of the public hearing? Okay, so we'll return to these questions on Wednesday at the public hearing.
Okay, we're going to move to future votes. On July 26th, staff has prepared favorable reports on the following applications. 40 Worcester Street, which is a special permit to allow retail use on the ground floor and residential use on the upper floors of an existing 6-story historic building. the East 126th Street Bus Depot, which is a mixed-use residential development with community facility space and an African burial ground memorial, including a historical and cultural center.
On this one, I'd like to make a couple of comments. During the public hearing, we actually had certification throughout this project. We clearly heard the commission express concerns about the flexibility that was afforded by this special district. And we understood that this was in part to make sure that we could get the widest array of responses to the RFP. The department shares the concerns of the commissioner. I think Commissioner Ortiz put it particularly well, that we are balancing not wanting to have a constant series of discretionary actions, because we want to see this site redeveloped, particularly because it holds the promise of the memorial for the African burial ground, but at the same time, we feel a responsibility. We will be distributing to you tomorrow a revised report with revised text, and the text will add a chair's certification, which would ensure that before a building permit is issued, the proposed site plan comports with the criteria that we heard from the commission, and particularly the overall massing, the connection of the open space, the parkland, how it works with the memorial, and also the location of active ground floor uses, and that the certification would be that the design adequately addresses the commission's concerns that were expressed. We're still working on the timing provision, which is why I don't have it for you now. And it's an interesting dynamic that is here, which is we are now in halcyon days of relationships between city planning and EDC. It started under Carl Weisbrod, it continues perhaps because both of us have worn both hats. But me on behalf of the commission and James Patchett on behalf of EDC is looking out into a future that would be very different. I was certainly struck on the presentation by how much community involvement there was on the part of EDC, but I look forward and can anticipate a downside of another mayor, doesn't care about urban design, doesn't care about the memorial, and would just ram something through that's a skyscraper that fits out the maximum bulk. EDC says, you know what, in dealing with the staff on the chair certifications that are required, we are getting them in a timely manner. Your team is engaging with us throughout the process, but they look forward to a future in which there is a chair who says, I am going to design every blade of grass and I will hold up your project for 4 years. So those are the extremes that we're painting. And so what we are looking to do in a side letter between the department and EDC is to spell out the point at which our team, the department, will be involved. We want to get involved early on after the developer is selected so that we will, or as the RFP is being developed, so that we aren't presented with a design that is so fully baked that it's hard to make changes. To address EDC's concern that they don't want a chair certification turning into a multi-year process, we will agree that if the chair hasn't granted the certification by the time of the PDC sign-off, which is well down the line, that it would be deemed granted. And we think that this is a balance that assures we get what we really need, which is having the expert design team be involved very early and throughout the design process so that the chair certification just becomes an embodiment of the relationship, the way in which we've worked productively, which is certainly what our expectation is. So again, this is an oral description. You'll be presented, I anticipate at some point tomorrow, with the actual zoning text and with the report language that embodies this. Oh, of course.
Chair Lago, thanks for that follow-up. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that multiple things are being balanced. Just for my own information, because I'm unfamiliar, how are agreements between agencies, side letter agreements between agencies that you're describing, is that pretty common, and are they respected?
Yeah, they're there just to have a written record in the event that, let's say, there's a failed RFP and it's 10 years down the line and the characters have changed. It's not a written agreement because of fear that the current folks aren't going to be living up to the agreement. I just think it's sort of good governance and a good paper trail. Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Well, I really appreciate you laying it out in the graceful but firm way that you did. I think as you indicate the circumstances that we might see in the future, some of us have lived those circumstances in the past. And it is true that we are in a halcyon moment where we don't have to worry about both of those things and that good work is being done on all sides. So I got quite excited when I read enthusiastic when I read the draft language in the report about the importance of the commission having an opportunity to review future design. You're describing a chair certification, so what role would the commission have at that point?
Thank you. I neglected to raise that point, which is that I would commit to bring back to the commission at the time of selection what the proposal is then. So that would be a very early opportunity for input. We also know that between the time of designation and then the actual project, a period of months, if not years, occurs, and that there are changes throughout there. And so we would, I can't tell you the exact moment, but well in advance of signing the certification, would bring back again to the commission the revised design. I would certainly commit to keeping the commission informed because I do think it would be, one, I would benefit, the department would benefit, and two, I think it would be a helpful conversation since our meetings are public to have in a public forum at a review session.
Right, those are the two reasons to do it. So would that commitment then live beyond this commission and into the future if this project takes more time than any of us are around to participate? I mean, in other words, is the consultation with the commission something you would anticipate going into the text, or?
I would write it into the report, into the consideration. Okay. In the report, I think would be the right way to do it.
So it'll be a
so that there is this
public record that the commission will have a consultative
absolutely.
role. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, we will also be voting on the special West Chelsea District Text Amendment, which was to allow support space for the High Line to be provided in lieu of public access elevators and stairway. The 120 Kingston Avenue, the special permit to reestablish the Kingston Lounge. 1618 Fulton Street, a 11-story mixed-use building with affordable housing in Brooklyn, zoning text and zoning map changes. The 50 Nevin Street rezoning, zoning text and map changes to facilitate a supportive housing unit and ground floor retail use built over an existing supporting housing building. The Maple Street Open Space and Garden, site selection acquisition of property for passive recreational space and garden use. Then we have 3 commission certifications for zoning lot subdivision in Staten Island at 5 Tompkins Circles, the South Service Road, and Genesee Bartlett Richmond Avenue. We have 2 authorizations for tree and topo modifications to allow single-family houses on 2 contiguous lots at Fieldston Road, 4490 Fieldston Road, lots 1 and 2, which includes private road modifications. The Fiegelson residence is an authorization for tree and topography modifications to allow a swimming pool. This is an application which was denied by the community board, and Juton Horseman is here to explain the thinking of the community board on that application.
I actually, before Juton goes through the specifics, generally we don't do presentations on these smaller projects of this type. But given the degree of controversy at the community board, given the amount of correspondence that had come in on all sides of the issue, we thought that it would make sense to have a public discussion of this at the review session in advance of the vote.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, Commission. So this is 660 West 261st Street, Fiegelson Residence, which is a special metro area district authorizations. So to quickly orient yourself, this is in the Special Natural Area District. In red outlines the boundary, which has the Riverdale Historic District and the Fieldson Historic District. This is in the Riverdale neighborhood. Here is the site located here. It's literally in the most northwest portion of the Bronx, or the city. The College of Mount St. Vincent is across the street to the north, and then you have the Hebrew home just to the west. So the existing conditions on the site, so the existing site is a 24,400 square foot site. The home is located here. It is about 6,300 square feet, existing 2 to 3 story home. You can see, so the area of the authorizations would be located here, where they would be looking at building a new in-ground swimming pool. To give you kind of some context, it would be in this area here, and a lot of the discussion is on removal of these 2 trees, this one and this one. Again, from the other side, this tree and this tree. So, unfortunately, it's a little bit washed out, apologize. This is the proposal. The applicant was seeking to build the in-ground swimming pool, which would be 720 square feet, 40 feet in length by 18 feet wide. The entire area would then have a spa and then some a patio around it, which is about 60 feet by 30 feet. The applicant originally, upon submission, was seeking to remove trees 7, 10, and 12. We referred this application out in March 22nd to the committee board. At the committee board, there were concerns over the removal of the trees, and then the neighbor here had concerns over the drainage and stormwater runoff on their site. At the June committee board meeting, there was also discussion if these 2 trees had existing disease and should just be removed regardless of if anything happens on the site. The committee board meeting was adjourned, and in June, when it reconvened, the applicant had brought a arborist letter, which basically said 7, 10, 12, 11, and 18 should all be removed. So they did a comprehensive look at all the trees on the site, and they determined those should be removed. At the committee board, the discussion, the committee board wasn't satisfied, and they rejected the application. The applicant also, in order to respond to some of the drainage, was looking at putting in a berm, a 6-inch berm, in order to help the runoff, and then also for stormwater management was going to be putting in a catchwater basin. Actually, one more thing. We received, after the committee board, a couple additional a letter from the committee board, and again, one from the neighbor and from the neighbor's brother, who all issued letters asking for the application to be rejected based on the stormwater runoff and the tree removal concerns. The applicant responded with a letter in just a couple weeks ago, or last week, addressing the 3 main points. The main points were, first, regarding the rainwater runoff and erosion control, that in any application, in order to build anything, they have to meet local law 103, which retains all stormwater runoff on the site. Again, they have a dry well located here with area drains which would run into this, as well as the berm identified here to make sure all the rainwater does not go onto the neighbor's site. The second piece was analyzing alternative location and size of the development, or of the pool. So here was basically, in order to save these 2 trees that the community had concerns regarding, the pool would have to be, I think it was 22 feet, which did not meet the needs of the applicant. The other piece of it was possibly rotating the pool. And if the pool had been rotated, it actually would impact these other two trees. So it was a situation of these two versus these two, and these two were actually in much better condition. And with the arborist saying that these two should be removed, it did not make sense to rotate the pool. The third part of it was regarding the arborist report that the community did not agree with the arborist report. And basically at this point, because it is, the owner has a arborist report saying that those trees should be removed. If they do not remove the trees, it would be a safety and liability issue. If anything happens to either people or property, that the owner could be liable and that those trees should come out regardless of the swimming pool. Anyway.
Yes, Commissioner Efron.
I read the correspondence, and I just kept wondering, is there any reason to doubt the veracity of the arborist?
I'll note that the arborist is the arborist used by the White House.
Okay.
The care of trees.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because it struck me as a professional risk for somebody to issue a false report.
And I guess I didn't say that there was the, so the neighbor did get an arborist report as well.
Yeah.
And that arborist report did agree that this tree and this tree should be removed. But these three trees, they thought they could do some other options. However, it should also be noted that they did not have access to the site and that they were doing the analysis from the neighboring property. So with that, when you get closer, I can't speak to it.
Yes, Commissioner Besser.
Sorry, just to clarify, did you say that they were moving into or committing to the berm?
They will be, it will be part of the application. They will be doing the berm, yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Just curious, do they have any issues with stormwater runoff today?
The neighbor has said that they have flooding today and that they have put in pumps in order to help remove the runoff.
So regardless of this application, assuming, this homeowner may have to put in the berm anyway. So let me rephrase my question statement. This application does not affect the existing condition of the stormwater runoff, and something would have to mitigate that anyway at some point or the other.
Yes, yeah, they would have to meet the local law and make sure that all stormwater is retained on their site.
And the pool is not contributing to the stormwater runoff, or is it after it's built?
The pool, I mean, after, I think the question is after it's built, would it create more stormwater
Correct,
runoff?
correct.
And the requirement DOB would be that it would not create any more runoff.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yeah, thanks. How much hardscape is there versus what was there before?
Sure, good question.
Eliminate the pool from that hardscape.
So today, give me 1 second, I have the number right here. The site has 7,500 square feet of impervious surface. They would be adding 2,275 square feet of impervious surface. So you're going from 60% of the lot, sorry, 69% of the lot to 60% of the lot. So it's a 9% change.
Do they consider the pool as a hardscape or soft?
Yes, yes. The pool, patio, spot, everything.
No, not the patio, the pool itself.
The pool is considered, yes.
The pool would be an absorber rather than a runoff.
No, they don't consider that.
Sure, yes, but yeah, I mean, as far as the, yeah. I see what you're saying. The pool could take in water.
Right.
We're taking a lot of time on a small item, but we wanted to show that we had carefully considered this, particularly in light of the fact that after the fact, we received all of the back and forth. It's not because we had questions about the application. And so this one will also go for a vote on Wednesday.
CBA appreciates it, I should.
All New Yorkers appreciate it. Tree lovers everywhere.
On August 9th, staff will be preparing reports for the 107th Street parking facility for the police department. That's the new parking garage proposed in the Lexington Gardens 2 development. The Morris Park Improvement District, and the East Shore Special Coastal Risk District in Staten Island. On August 23rd, we will also be preparing a report for the Lower Concourse North rezoning.
And on that, I'll note, we'll take the same approach with respect to EDC.
Great.
And that's what's upcoming.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.